Welcome to today's episode of People and Strategy. I'm your host, Mo Fatalbab, President of International Facilitators Organization. People and Strategy is a podcast from the SHRM Executive Network, the premier network of executives in the field of human resources. Each week, we bring you in-depth conversations with the country's top HR executives and thought leaders. For today's conversation, I'm excited to be joined by Sara Daw, author and entrepreneur. Sara is the co-founder and group CEO of the CFO Center and the Liberti Group, the global #1 provider of part-time and fractional C-suite professionals. Welcome, Sara.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Great to have you with us. Sara, I want to start with your career journey and how you found yourself in this wonderful spot of the fractional CEO or C-suite space.
Yes. Well, it was by necessity, actually, that I ended up here. So I was a CA and an MBA, and the only people that wanted to hire me, quite rightly after doing an MBA, was the investment banks. I had just got married, I was starting a family, and I didn't want to go back into corporate life. I wanted to find a role and a career that would be fulfilling, but also I wanted to be mum at the same time. So I wanted to have it all, I guess. And this is, 20, 25 years ago now, and I couldn't see my way through that in corporate. So I actually set myself up as an independent and what we called back then part-time FD. And it's now, that terminology is now fractional CFO, but it's the same thing because I was a CFO and I thought, do you know what? There are these SMEs out there, these growing entrepreneurial businesses and larger organizations who need the skill set of a CFO, but they don't need it full time. They don't want it full time and they can't afford it full time. So I thought I could build a portfolio, work with 3 or 4 organizations locally and offer my services, say a day a week for one, 2 days a month for another. And also at the same time, obviously bring up my family. So yes, that's how it started.
And so you were the first fractional C-suite person in your business, and then you grew from there. Tell us about that journey a little bit.
Well, actually, what happened was, so I set myself up and I thought, do you know what? I really want to work with others. And I wasn't quite sure how much of a connection I would have with the businesses that I worked with. It turned out a deep connection, but I didn't know that at the time. So I thought, who else is doing this fractional work? And I looked around and I found an individual called Colin Mills, who was a fractional CFO, busy building his portfolio. And he'd set up something called the FD Center a few years earlier. So I met him and joined up. I liked the idea. And that's the business that became the CFO Center. Later on, we rebranded from FD to CFO and we built the business from there. Both firstly, it was sort of nationally in the UK, and then we went on to take it overseas. And now we're in 17 countries globally, and we've expanded outside of just fractional CFO into other C-suite disciplines. So people, HR, marketing, sales as well. And that's what the business does now. So that's been the role and the journey.
Well, that is an incredible journey and an incredible trajectory. Congratulations on your growth.
Thanks. Yeah, it's definitely been exhilarating and chaotic at times, I would say, but
yes, it is. As businesses are, right?
Yeah.
So, Sara, why do you think companies are increasingly leaning on fractional C-suite roles?
Yes. Now, this is a really good question. I mean, so we've got a couple of categories here. You've got the entrepreneurial businesses. So I would say the smaller growing businesses run by an owner founder. And those organizations, maybe they're sort of 2 million revenue to 100 million revenue, something like that. They are the ones that need these skills to scale because they absolutely need these sophisticated strategic skill sets, but they can't afford it full time. They don't want it full time. And quite frankly, they don't need it full time. So they can bring in this fractional approach and it can help the business owner founder get the right people in the right roles, really access the skills, the functional skills that businesses need that an owner-founder probably doesn't have or doesn't want to do. And that's how they can grow their organization. So that's sort of one set of businesses. And they're really important, by the way, those SMEs, because they're the sort of underpin, if you like, of the global economies around the world. So hugely important to get those working. And then you've got sort of mid to large corporate, so slightly bigger organizations where they might have a group CMO, CHRO, CFO. So they've got the group C-suite in place. But those individuals are extremely under pressure, if you like, both to complete on everything on their to-do list and to perform and be top of their game the whole time. And they need extra skills wrapped around them for geography gaps, functional gaps, time gaps, so they can concentrate on the bits of the role that they absolutely have to do. And they can tap into a sort of dynamic talent pool of fractionals in a team environment and bring in the skill sets on a very flexible basis. So they don't have to bring in a whole hire or a head count. They can just tap into these teams of people. And so it works brilliantly for them as well.
That is brilliant indeed. So what are some of the attributes of fractional C-suite roles?
The roles, I would say, are, and if you're thinking, if you're an entrepreneur or a group C-suite person thinking about, trying this out, what I would suggest is don't necessarily think of it as a job, because that's the sort of old way or the traditional way, if you like. Think of it as the work that you need doing. So what is it? Is it extra skills? Is it special skills? Is it a project? Is it long term? What are the gaps, if you like, to grow your business or manage your function? And I would define the work, and then I would find the person with the right cultural fit to map to that. In the C-suite space, is very likely to be strategic. These are individuals who are used to working in large organizations. They've been there, seen it and done it in terms of the C-suite function. And they will probably have certain specialisms. So it might be sector, it might be function. And so therefore you can really sort of target the very absolutely specific skills that you need to bring into your organization.
That sounds like quite a lot of work on your end to make sure you do the right matching and to make sure that it is a good match, yeah?
Yeah, and that's what organizations like the CFO Center and Liberti Group do. We would be, we're a new breed of organization. So I guess there isn't a label you can put on us. We're not recruitment, we're not consulting. We're a totally sort of new organization where we provide a community for the fractional C-suite leaders. So they've got their businesses they work with, and they will definitely be part of those and part of that team. But in between all of that, and as backup, they are part of an organization like ours where they can have learning and development, community, backup support, which means they can always use that as a resource to get the answer for an area they don't know or a geography that they don't know. And they always feel supported and they're always learning and growing. And equally, we can make sure that the individuals involved in this fractional C-suite aren't, taking on too much work, that they're getting the right work-life balance that they need to help the organizations. So that's the sort of organization that the CFO Center and Liberti Group is, and there are others out there. But I think, what's powerful about those is it means that the businesses can tap into the power of many and get access to lots of skills and network, and not just one individual.
Yeah. So what makes a fractional role gel well with a business? Because what I'm getting very clearly in our conversation is that is very important. It's not just a part-time role. It is a partnership of sorts.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It is so much a partnership. I can't tell you. It's there has to be alignment at values level and purpose level between the business owner and his team or her team, and the fractional C-suite leader, because this is a partnership. To get full value, it's important, it's long term. I mean, of course, these people can come in and do a project. I mean, that's easy. They will be able to do that. But that's where I think if you look at it that way, I think it's a bit short-sighted. By fully integrating into the business and being that C-suite leader, just not there all the time, just like any other sort of hybrid worker potentially that an organization has. We're not always present, but we can be always thinking about the organization. We can be looking at risk ahead and spotting those things that probably maybe the organization hasn't seen. And to do that, we have to build a really, really deep relationship. And that's, I think, key. And there's something called psychological ownership, which I have uncovered in my research, that is essential, I think, to build a relationship that's value adding both sides and long term and trusting in the absence of an employment relationship.
All right. So let's talk about this psychological ownership. First, please define it for us. And then after that, I want to talk about how you make it happen.
So defining it, it's an academic concept. It's well researched. So, I didn't come up with this on a wet Wednesday afternoon. It was something that I realized it was in place in other access economy models. So if I just take a little step back, I uncovered it because I was looking at our business model and researching it and realizing that, the businesses are accessing our services, but not owning or employing, if you like, these people. So what other access economy models are out there? The audience today will be very familiar with these. They are the likes of Uber, Airbnb, Spotify, Netflix, Zipcar. So this is where we access services instead of owning them, yet it feels like they belong to us. And that's the concept of psychological ownership, that feeling that it's ours, even though legally it isn't. And that's what I wanted to delve into in my research is, does this exist? Is this what holds these relationships together in the fractional C-suite? And, I certainly found evidence that in certain relationships where there were certain ingredients, psychological ownership, that feeling that something belongs to us, it's mine, it's ours, was in play. And so then I started looking at the components of psychological ownership to see if I could see them in these relationships. So there's something called roots, as in like tree roots, that are the foundation. So it's a nice way to think of it. Tree roots, they hold the tree up. These are the foundations of psychological ownership. And these are the reasons why it exists. And there are three of them. And the first one is efficacy. Now, what I mean by that is that the business model, the case for the relationship works in commercial terms, in cultural terms. There's value, both sides. So, this fractional leader has to deliver value for the business. The business has to be a fulfilling place for this individual to work. And so there's a value exchange. That's the first thing. And, you can work together to form desired goals, shared outcomes, that sort of thing. Then secondly, there's something called self-identity. So the relationship between the two parties has to add to each other's identity. So an example would be, I'm a fractional C-suite leader and I'm a fractional CFO. The business owner would say, I've got a CFO, and they'd say that to their investors, their bank, their clients, and it makes them feel credible, investable, serious, sort of bigger than they are, perhaps. And that adds to their identity. And equally, the C-suite leader, by working, perhaps say it's a tech business, they develop more of a specialism in tech, which adds to their identity. So has to work both ways, but that has to be in place. And then the third thing is that we need to have a sense of belonging. We are social animals as humans. We want to be part of something. So the C-suite leader needs to feel as if they belong to the organization. The business owner needs to call them my C-suite leader, my CMO, not someone outside their organization. And the C-suite leader themselves has to talk about the business as my business, where I work. and as if it's part of them. So it's that belonging piece. If you can have those in place, then you can go on to develop some routes, which are how you build psychological ownership.
It seems to me each one of those attributes is also important for a full-time employee.
Totally.
And so,
there's no rocket science there. So this is not something that only works in Access. It should be in all the productive relationships. I mean, I'm afraid to say it probably isn't in all relationships. And the only thing I would say is sometimes I've noticed that when we've got an employment contract, we tend to use that as a bit of a crutch sometimes to think that we've got the relationship because we've got that signed contract, when in fact the hearts and minds aren't in the relationship at all and we haven't built those roots. So, this is a learning across all relationships that we need to put the effort in here.
Yeah. And what are the typical number of hours that the fractional C-suite roles spend with each client?
Gosh, that varies. That really does. I mean, I would say, from my knowledge in our organization, a typical C-suite role for an entrepreneurial business would be around about a day a week. So, maybe that's a sort of 10 million, 15 million revenue business. That may be a day a week. It may increase at times of intensity, but the beauty of the model is you can dial it up and dial it back. And if you're working with a firm of fractional leaders rather than an independent, what you can do is then bring in other team members to fill capacity gaps or skill gaps. So you might have a lead fractional C-suite individual whose primary relationship is with that business. But if they feel there's someone better to do a specific task or role, then they can bring them in for that specific piece and then they can go away again. So it can expand and contract really nicely. But you can have anything from, a day a month, all the way up to, 3 or 4 days a week for really heavy pieces of work that might subside over time, but is a temporary piece of workload.
So one of the things we talk about at SHRM a lot is the concept of belonging. How do you ensure that when you place this person, that they do feel a sense of belonging? And what are you doing with the client to ensure that they also do their part to have this person feel a sense of belonging?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I think it's really important in setting the relationship up well from the start. So many businesses haven't worked with a fractional leader before. So it's all new territory, if you like. And there's lots of questions around, how does it work? And will they be at my board meetings? And how often will I speak to them, etc. And I think it's really important for the fractional leader to guide the business owner through this and talk about, how they're going to communicate, how they're going to introduce each other internally and externally, get rules of engagement around how often they're going to speak, what mode of communication, are they going to be part of the senior leadership team? And I would definitely advocate that. So welcoming the fractional leader into the senior leadership meetings. And I would encourage the fractional leader to literally camp out as much as possible at the organization, basically adapt their culture. So be on the inside, be an insider. And the more the fractional leader can act like an employee and be an insider, the more that sense of belonging will just naturally happen. And actually, fractional leaders, I think, have to be quite chameleon.